What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 10 of To the Show We Go with Ed Hand and myself, Andrew Parker. If you hadn't had the chance to listen to episode 9 yet, we had one of the more interesting guys in the Red Sox organization, a left-handed pitcher, Nathan Landry. He just finished a year in Greenville. He's a Mizzou guy, obviously a great guy. He's also a French Canadian. He's got an amazing story. He's more comfortable now than he's ever been in the United States as well. So check that one out. He is just an awesome guy. And today we have a Red Sox favorite, former player, obviously everybody's favorite broadcaster, Lou Merloni. Lou, what's been going on this offseason?
Oh, it's been a whole lot of. I've seen a little bit of golf, Home Depot, Lowe's, all the real exciting stuff. No, when the season's over, man, it's like it just comes crashing down. So sometimes you got some things you got to do around the house and got to play some golf, right? So I'm having fun, relaxing.
Yeah, we were when we were chatting with we've chatted now with Ed, I think probably about 5 to 6, maybe 7 of the 10 episodes we've done have been with current players, and almost every single one of them are working on their golf game.
Yep.
Even Nathan Landry went back to Canada, and he said, "Hey, I was even able to golf up here, even though the season usually doesn't last that long." So it's been good. So we're kind of happy. You are now our third non-player we've done since the offseason started. So you're in good company with Rob Bradford there. So, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, he was a great interview as always. But I kind of wanted to just kind of chat a little bit. What was I guess looking back at 2023, I guess in your chair in the booth and just everything that goes on with it, like how would you kind of categorize your particular season?
Well, as far as for me doing my job, like I loved it. Like I couldn't have been happier. My wife even talked about how happier I was, to be able to go just do the games. Like I would so excited just to get back traveling a little bit and kind of get back to that lifestyle, but it wasn't every single day, right? I did about 90 games, whatever it was. So I'd go on the road for a week, come back for a week, work 3 or 4 days, have 3 or 4 days off. But I just love doing it. Like I would do a game and Sox would lose and like it pisses me off, when they lose, whatever. But I'd go to bed and I'd be like, I get to do it tomorrow. I mean, it was just the coolest thing in the world. So I loved it. I hope I get to do, again next year or more next year or whatever it's going to be. But I had a blast doing it, and it's kind of weird now because it's total baseball. I haven't done it in 15 years where you have a season, then you have an off season to just kind of do nothing and figure out what you're going to do. So I'm kind of in the middle of that right now.
Did you find, because you were doing both EEI games and NESN games, did you find that there was a big difference between how you would call a radio game versus like a televised one?
Yeah, I kind of liked it because it was just a back and forth challenge, something new. Obviously, on radio, you're more descriptive of the play. On TV, I don't have to talk about how he went 2 steps to his right and made a nice play on his knee or whatever because you can see that, right? But I did notice the one thing I would say by doing both was that the pitch clock definitely affects radio more than TV.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, it's just, on radio, you got to say, here comes the pitch, right? On TV, you see it coming. So it's sort of like you don't have much time to talk, on radio. On TV, sometimes you can get into something and you can see the pitch and you pause for that slight second and it's ball 1 and you just keep going. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you can do it a little bit more when you see it on TV and you don't need that play-by-play, Will Fleming or Joe just being like, the 1-0 pitch, So that's the one thing I noticed with the pitch clock is at radio it was a little bit tighter, and TV at times you maybe talk through a pitch once in a while.
And do you think you kind of and I think I have seen your tweets about it, but would you say that the new changes, like every single one of them, was pretty much a success this year?
Yeah, I think the big base was completely overblown. Everybody thought it was going to be a big deal. I really had no idea how it was going to come into play. And I don't think it did, quite frankly, and I don't, I guess it added 3 inches to like a stolen base. Like, I don't know. I never really remember watching a play thinking, boy, if there wasn't a big base, he would have been out, So I don't know, safety reasons at first base, but there's no question the other ones. The pitch clock I thought was fantastic. And this really, I'm hoping that within a year or 2 or 3, you don't even need a pitch clock because all these guys this is how they play because the game just got so slow and, they needed to reset this thing and teach these guys and get them in better habits. And it was somewhat drastic. But I think it worked, and hopefully we'll see in the next few years. Like I said, this is just what everybody does. This is their routine. So I don't even want to notice a pitch clock in the next few years. We'll see how it goes.
I don't want to harp on the. Oh, Ed, I was just gonna say I don't want to kind of like hammer down on the rules thing just because I feel like we've been talking about it all year. But I was talking with a few of the guys down in Worcester, and we were even chatting with some guys down in High A and Double A, and they were kind of talking about like, oh, well, we don't have the ABS system yet because it was just in Triple A this past year, and or the challenge system or anything like that. But I want to know your thoughts on the ABS in AAA and like the challenge system. If that would what are your thoughts on if they would affect the MLB at all, or if it's going to implement it?
Yeah, I think it's coming. Yeah, I think it might be a couple of years, but I think it's coming. The one, that I don't get is I know there's two different ones, right? Just straight up, the ABS. I think that's just the computer part, right? Then there's also the challenge thing. The challenge one I don't get. It just in the sense of how many, if you're allowed 2, 3, 4, you know what I mean? Like as a hitter, how do I find out that I have the okay to challenge that? You know what I mean? It's like, because we've seen like coaches don't want to use the challenge in the first inning or the second inning, but it's up to the manager to decide whether he thinks it's that important to challenge it. So as a leadoff hitter, I don't like a 1-2 pitch. I'm going to use one of my challenges, the first hitter of the game, because every single hitter in the big leagues thinks their at bat is the most important at bat of the game. You know what I mean? And I would want to use them for myself. A pitcher would want to use them for a hitter. Every hitter would want to use it, especially at the big league level. Like these are your stats, these are your numbers. So it's like, how do I determine if I can use them? There's some guys that would burn all 2 or 3 or 4 in one at bat because it's just their at bat's more important. You know what I mean? So I don't know how that would work. You get a sign like, hey, if you get screwed here, you can use your challenge. Like I'll allow you that to happen. Like I don't get that part.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in Chad Tracy's office post games this season down in Worcester, and a lot of those questions came up, and then they're just like, hey, like why the other team left like 2 of their challenges on the bench, and it was a close game in the 9th, and we were always trying to ask like okay, Chad, like why did you guys not use one in the bottom of the 8th and you guys had a chance to, you guys got to have a guy on second? Like, it's like the guy has to make up his mind. He's like, well, I want to save that one for the 9th, but then the chance doesn't come. So yeah, it's tough. But yeah, I was curious on it because I've found out that majority of the players that I talk to down in AAA love the challenge system just because of they're like, okay, I know my strike zone, I know where I'm at, and it got adjusted over the last half of the season. So they all like the challenge system, and I thought that baseball might be the only sport without a challenge system. So it kind of makes sense why they would implement it, but I'm kind of the same thing as you is why not just have it be ABS and that way you're not leaving it for.
But like you said, some of those guys know the strike zone, and there are some guys that maybe you would trust. You know what I mean? And be like, okay, I think he knows the strike zone well. There are other guys that pitch all the time that's not a strike, and then you're like, dude, it was right. It was a really good pitch. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. I would like, okay, trust you to do your challenge because you don't really know the zone. I trust Casas because I think he does know the zone. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That'd be interesting, kind of how the manager relates to his players about who gives the okay and when they can do it.
Speaking of Casas, it was definitely an interesting season for him. Started off as cold as you could be, and then by the end of the season, you can make a case he was, if not the best, like a top 3 hitter on the team. What is the biggest difference for a hitter, major league pitching versus minor league pitching? And what was Casas? What did he have to figure out?
I think early on he tried to be too fine, and sometimes like depending on the certain counts, pitches maybe on the black are extremely hittable. You know, like he would get to 1-0 and 2-0 and take a pitch just down, borderline strike, and they call it a strike on him. And I'm like, dude, 1-0, you drive the shit out of that ball in the gap. Like I don't care if it's on the black down. You know what I mean? Like you attack that ball. 2-0 fastball, borderline up. If you Devers maybe no because he likes to chase that pitch. But a guy like Casas, 2-0, if you're aggressive and you can get the head out, it's borderline up. You can still drive that ball. Like I felt like 1-0, 2-0, he was waiting for pitches right down the shitter, like right down the middle of the plate. And it was like, dude, There's not going to be too many of those. I'm not saying there won't be. There will be, but stop trying to be too fine and look for a ball, say, inner half. And if you look for a ball inner half, you might be able to hit a ball an inch or two off the inside corner, because you're looking for that. So for me, I think it was a lot of that early on, maybe taking pitches that were borderline that were still very hittable. And I think later on he got more aggressive. And you started to see him expand a little bit and still be able to drive the ball, which is what maybe he could have been doing in April. But it's a rookie, so he learns. Everybody kind of figures that part of it out.
Oh man, how much did you miss that when you were doing when you were on talk radio for 15 years? How much did you miss just like really being able to talk the analysis and everything?
I did, man, because when I first started in 08, whatever it was, like there was still a lot of baseball talk. Like they brought me on because there was not enough baseball talk, right? 04, 07, like there was a lot of Sox talk. Lately, they run from it. And a lot of that's to do with the personnel that's on the radio. A lot of it's to do with the Patriots and the influx of the Patriots and what's going on with the Celtics. So it's like we got to find more football guys. We got to find more Celtics people. So you get away from baseball. And then the more you work with those types of people that don't watch baseball or know baseball, they don't want to talk it, right? So that's just kind of the way it went. So for me to be able to do, I remember when I used to do like 25, 30 games a year at the EI, because I still do it in the show. I wasn't around it at all. And I was like, God, if I was ever around it, like I'd be able to see so much more, like seeing these guys every at bat, seeing these guys every pitch, like knowing more about each and every one of these guys by the end of the season. I feel like you kind of do that when you watch these guys have as many at bats as you did or innings as you did. So I just loved waking up and it was just nothing but baseball.
And we were kind of talking about Sox prospects a little bit before we started recording, but how big of a prospect guy are you?
Say that again?
How big of a prospect guy are you? Like, do you follow it religiously?
I think that's one of my favorite things in spring training. And that's why I really talk to those guys a lot, like in the winter and going into the season, because like in spring training, I go down there and, I'm not going to go to the cage and watch, Xander Bogaerts and Rafi Devers and JD Martinez hit. Like, I know what that is. I know what it looks like. I mean, it might be someone new that you're like trying to, maybe he's doing something different, but I go to the backfields where I want to get my eyes on these prospects for the first time. I want to look at, say, down Rafaela, like in spring training. Last year, I want to watch Tristan Casas. I want to watch Nick York. I want to watch Marcelo Meyer. This year, it's like Anthony, right? So it's like, I want to go down and watch these guys for the first time, because all you do is you hear this, you hear that. And sometimes you go down there and you're like, I might watch a guy for 2 days and follow him around, taking BP, ground balls, whatever it may be, watch him throw live, and just sort of walk into somebody that I trust, in that organization, be like, am I missing something? Like, I'm not really, what are we excited about here with this kid? You know what I mean? And so there's been a few of those in the past, but I just like seeing the kids that I don't know much about. So those guys are awesome. They give you a head start, give you kind of what to look for, which is fantastic. And then you can kind of see it from there. And then we kind of compare notes. Actually, it's fun. Oh, geez, back to back.
Were there any prospects that you got to see this year that you were kind of blown away by?
I did like seeing Miguel Blaze. That was one guy that I wanted to go see a lot, and I was impressed with Rafaela. And I felt like it was a weird spring for him because he was really kind of just being told not to swing at balls. That I don't think he attacked fastballs. I don't think he attacked strikes. The way
he didn't hit that well initially.
No, but it was like in an aggressive hitter, you tell him in the back of your mind, take, and he loses all effect, of who he is. So I think he almost took it overboard, or they pushed it maybe too hard, or whatever, right? But I just felt like he wasn't the same guy. But you saw it in BP, you know what I mean? I could see like this little dude, with just some rocket hands, like hitting the ball harder than probably he should. And then Miguel Blaze was so young, you get that little flash, man. Like he's just a flashy dude. Got some juice, swings it for a kid his age, his size, with an arm. So that was kind of fun to watch both those guys. And Meyer, I love. I just think he's like a very mature game. His swing is just very mature and smooth. Defensively, he's very smooth. The way he goes about his business, he just seems like a very mature kid. His game is advanced.
Do you think any of the young guys that came up this year, if you had to guess, just which of the guys do you think have a chance at a starting spot next year?
I thought Wilyer Abreu was the best looking hitter I've seen since Devers. And I'm comparing him to Devers, I don't know if I'm saying beat Devers, but think about like the first look at rookies we've seen. Like Duran's first look, it was, I guess, actually got hot for a couple of weeks, right? Then he got exposed, but then Tristan's first look was last September and the month of April. I'm just saying a lot of these guys that have come up, your first looks, you're like, he's young. We'll see what he is. And then they had that stretch of like the Bobby Dahlbecks was the guy, you're like, oh, it's too much swing and miss. Abreu's, I talk about a mature approach to the big leagues. It's funny because all these guys that we keep hearing about all these prospects, and saw Manuel Valdez first, and then all of a sudden it becomes Wilyer Abreu, and he looked like a man, great balance, a good eye. He lets the ball get deep. He sees the ball a long way. He takes balls like he'll go the other way, with changeup splits away. I think it was the kid. I forget. Who was it? I forget. Was it Baltimore? I forget. Cano, maybe, that change up away that at Fenway Park was line drive, but very mature approach. And by the way, he can play defense. Like I don't know about you guys. I'm done with a prospect who can't play defense. If you can't play defense, move him. Like it just can't happen. You can't have a rookie coming up here relying on him hitting day one. Like it's a tough league. Like you can't come up here and just think you're going to hit 300. So there's going to be an offensive struggle. And if there is, you better help me win defensively. And if you're a defensive liability and now you're struggling offensively, I don't know what we're doing. So, I think he's got a good arm and he carries himself well in the outfield.
Yeah, you bring up the defense, and there was a guy that came in that package with Abreu for Christian Vasquez and Manuel Valdez, who can hit. We saw him do some serious damage with the bat, but the defense, as you said, big liability. Now, at the end of the season, Cora mentioned that he was going to be working with, I guess, Fabulous at the time in winter ball. Obviously, Fabulous isn't with the club anymore. But can a player go from being a below average defender like that and in like a middle infielder position to being passable there? Like how would you even go about developing that in him when he's, I think, 24 now, and he's already, I'm sure, worked a lot on it?
Yeah, and I still think even at 24, I still consider it somewhat young. I would never put limitations on a kid to say like he'll never be able to improve. You know what I mean? Because this is what you do in the off season. And I feel like I kind of got burned by Duran because, to be honest with you, when I first saw him, I'm like, can't hit, they can't play, and after that first year or two, and to his credit, he came back, but he's everything. He got rid of the leg kick. He got his hands up. He looks like an athlete now, and defensively he worked and he got better. So can Valdez get to average? Can he get to an average infielder? The thing is like, I agree that he can hit. Can he hit well enough? You know what I mean? Like, I'll deal with Devers' defense. I'll deal with Casas' defense. He's young. He can improve too, his first step. Yoshida, I think year two, I'll deal with his defense. He'll be out there, maybe DH more often, whatever. Because those guys have proven, I think, that they can hit. And even though, I think Yoshida kind of faded down the stretch. This guy here, I don't know, is he a 200 hitter with occasional pop? Is he a streaky hitter? Is he a 280 hitter? I don't know what he is. So I just think defensively he's got to improve because especially middle infield. We should have saw that coming at the beginning of the year. I remember talking about like up the middle of the field between the two catchers, the two middle infielders, and the center fielder. None of them ever played that position more than 40, 50 games, and you just knew defensively it was going to be a struggle.
I kind of wanted to switch to the pitching side of things. On obviously, like we talked about with the Abreu's and the Rafaelas and the Valdez's. Were you impressed at all with what you saw from Chris Murphy and Brandon Walter?
More so maybe Murphy. I think he got a longer look. I felt like coming out of the bullpen, it was funny. He came up and I heard he kind of just got rid of his curveball, right, in the minor leagues and just threw his fastball and slider for strikes. And really that was all he kind of needed, was just to throw strikes. I saw him in spring training game. I think it was Dunedin. I had called the game, and I think it was Dunedin, or it might have been whenever I started a spring training game. I defined him as effectively wild, and he faced a lot of AAA hitters, so it must have been at home. And they expanded 1-0, and they expanded 2-0, and 2-1, and 3-1. I'm like, big leagues ain't going to do that. You know what I mean? Not as wild as he was. He needs to throw strikes. So that movement to the pen, eliminating that curveball, I think helped him throw strikes. Then he got to the big leagues, and he saw some swings on his curveball, and he brought it back. So I think there's value there with him. The game is about long relief, right? Walters, I just didn't see enough about it. I didn't see enough. And when I did, I think I had that game in Minnesota where he came in and threw real well after that first inning. He threw like 4 or 5 innings. But I felt like the stuff was lacking a little bit. I thought that maybe the fastball was more powerful in years past. I think it was a couple years ago. So I just felt like the stuff dropped off. But I didn't see enough of them, to be honest with you.
Red Sox need pitching. They need pitching badly.
Yeah.
I think that it's pretty obvious that's going to be their big need going into the offseason. There's some other stuff too, but if you don't have some guys at the top of that rotation, like it's not going to matter. If you were to pick 3 guys that you would want them to target, and this could be free agency or trade, who would you be targeting?
Well, my free agent pick targets obviously Yamamoto, and it would be Nola, and it would be Montgomery. Yamamoto, just from what you saw in World Baseball Classic, all the reports, people I've talked to, what he is, what he can be, and more importantly, he's 25. And those, like every other free agent big league pitcher is going to be 29, 30 years old, and you're going to be asked to kind of sign them to whatever age. 25 years old, you bring his ass in here, and at the age is all the factors. With Nola, it's about innings pitched. It's about I know there's a little bit of a drop off this year with some of the stuff, maybe according to some people, but he's good for 180 innings. He's going to go 32 starts, and same thing with Montgomery. Montgomery's the guy that I wanted at the deadline. Obviously, they weren't in play at all, apparently. But and then we did a game in Texas, and he threw against the Red Sox, and he was this is the first guy you go get. You know what I mean? And then you try to go get those other guys, right? But this is going to be the first guy. Anchor him in there. Every year he's a sub-4 ERA. He gives you 32 starts. I mean, that is filth. And I even said it before the first game he pitched in the playoffs. And now, of course, he's making himself a lot more money, so it might cost a little bit more. And there's no qualifying offer, right? He was traded. That should matter at all to you, but it'll matter to other teams. So the market's going to be pretty heavy on him. But those are the three guys in free agency. In trades, it's like I kind of view Seattle as like this year's Miami Marlins. Like, dude, you got all these arms. You need bats, right? Like, can we package something over there to get Kirby, to get Gilbert, to get one of these dudes? Like, so that would be a team that maybe on the trade market you call and say, yeah, because I got to believe they're similar to Miami. Like, we could use a couple of bats or guys, young big league hitters ready, that type of thing.
So no Blake Snell for you?
No, and the reason he had a great year and he is really, really good, but I don't know. I get weary about guys like the first time they throw more than 128 innings in his career is on a free agent year, and you think he had one maybe like in 2016, 17, he threw like 180 innings, but he's been 128 innings like every year, and then all of a sudden, he goes out and has an amazing year. And I just don't want to pay top of the dollar if I'm going to do that. I want the track record to be 32 starts. I want the track record to be 180 innings. That's what you need. We saw that this year. You need innings. 130, that's awesome. That's great. But I'm not paying you the kind of money I got to pay Blake Snell to get 130 innings from him.
Do you think the performance that Montgomery's putting up right now for the Rangers in the postseason is pricing him out of the Red Sox's range?
Nobody should be priced out of the Red Sox range, And Yamamoto will be interesting because as young as he is and as good as he is, I mean, the kid Senga got 5 and 75? Like, it's so cheap. You know what I mean? But yeah. I think like an American free agent signing. I think he is going to get a monster deal. But I just don't think anybody should be. The question I have is how far do they go? Is there one $25 to $30 million pitcher on this staff? And then do they try to dive into like a $20 million guy, and this $15 million guy? Everybody wants to go get Yamamoto and Snell, like Yamamoto and Nola, you know what I mean? And now maybe Montgomery's in that category as well. I don't know. But they got to get one stud. They do. And then they got to go from there and see what the rest of that market lands. They really need to. We know that.
So there's one Japanese player that didn't get mentioned there, and I mean, not going to be pitching this year. But do you think the Red Sox are players for Shohei Ohtani?
I think you'll hear that they're interested in him. They should be, and I've said this before, like publicly, and of course I'm not going to cry if they get Shohei. I think it'll be an amazing amazing signing, right? Because it'd be entertaining, it'd be buzz and everything else. But I look at this team and say you got to improve your defense and you need pitching. And they go get Ohtani, who can't pitch and wants to DH. I don't know where the fit is. Can he play right field? I don't know where the fit is. It would be exciting. And I know there's a lot of people locally that wanted to go do that. Ironically, those are the same people locally that have shredded this team to make just PR moves. You know what I mean? Yet they wanted to do another one. So is he a unicorn? Sure. If he pitches. Let's be honest. If Shohei Ohtani is not a pitcher, he's a great hitter. Doesn't move the needle. You know what I mean? He's a great hitter. He's got to be a pitcher and he's got to be a hitter. So you should be involved. I think the market will be down a little bit. I think that there will be incentives. It'll be like a whatever guaranteed, and then incentives where he could make 55 to 60 million if he gives you 28 starts, but we know that wouldn't be till 2025. So they should be involved. There's no question about it. Go get Shohei Ohtani and just, one starting pitcher. What are you? Next year?
Not going to be much of a change from this year. They need the pitching to be immediate. They can't mess around until 2025.
Yeah, the question is is this like a 1 year? I know in 2025 a lot of money comes off. So they sit there and say, well, if it's a 2 year, build, we get Ohtani now, and then when you look at next year's free agent pitchers, there's some legit free agent pitchers as well. You could add, if you don't trade for him, you could add a Corbin Burns, you know what I mean, to go with Ohtani, who should be ready to go in 2025. So it just depends. I mean, you can make the argument it could be a 2 year rebuild, and I'm not saying still next year you should be a playoff team. You absolutely should be a playoff team. But 2025 is when you can maybe build it, to be that monster you'd like them to be.
And so we've talked a lot about the front office opening, and then with the free agent moves. I wanted to ask you about the coaching staff openings on the big league side. Where do you think they will turn to fill those spots?
The staff is interesting. I guess I wasn't surprised about Dave Bush. I don't know. A lot of people talking about the pitching needs to improve and everything else. They got some young arms that maybe didn't like the steps, even though I think Bayo took a huge step too, right? But and I thought Bush did a great job with Paxton, and even with Sale when he was healthy. So I mean, there was some good things, but just the way it is. And you look at Feblace, that was one that surprised me, only because you had mentioned earlier, Cora was really open, talking about Feblace is going to work with Devers, he's going to work with Valdez in the winter, and you're like, okay, well, I guess Feblace is back, and it's his boy, But I think I don't even know who because I have a hard time believing that Alex Cora moved on from Carlos Feblace, But so I don't know who made these calls, but I guess when you look at it and say pitching and defense, so you get rid of the people that are in charge of pitching and defense. Where they go from there, I have no idea. I really don't. I don't know where they go. The game is different. They could bring in somebody that's been known for this, that, and everything, and the pitching staff, and more creative. But you would like to see I'd like to get a little touch of what Tampa does, right? Everybody that joins their club apparently is just gets so much better, So I'd like to try to figure that stuff out. Maybe that's what they're searching for, someone in that mode.
Do you think that Cora remaining as manager, regardless, we seem to know that he's going to be back? Does that, and we've heard that affects the search for a new head executive. Do you believe it does? And do you think that it was, if you're going to bring somebody in, you should just let them clean house however they want to?
I actually think, more than anything, kind of moving on from 3 or 4, whatever it is, front office people or baseball ops GMs in the last 3 or 4 years, and giving these guys 4 years at a time, I think is affecting this search a little bit more than they realized. You know what I mean? The stability of the job. I don't believe it's Cora as much as, the people remaining in the front office. That's another one that kind of surprised me, and the whole Brian O'Halloran gets fired as a GM, but we hire him as an assistant, GM, kind of thing. And it's and I don't know if that was just Brian, the BOH, just sort of being like, hey, I'm just sort of blowing in the wind over here. You guys have fired me, but I'm sticking around. Can you give me a title at least till we find out who the next guy is? You know what I mean? I have no idea, but the new GM coming in, would he want his own manager? I suppose. But I do think that Alex Cora is well respected around the game as a baseball man. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's the biggest issue. But if I was going to be a new, front office guy, new general manager, I would want my baseball ops people with me. I would want my assistant general manager with me. I would want the guys I work with daily. To me, that would be more important. And that's something that Heim never got. Like Heim came into a similar situation, like holdovers, right? BOH is your GM, and Eddie and Raquel, who I love, and I think Eddie'd be a great choice. I mean, if they're going to stick with it internally, and to be honest with you, if he's sticking with Core and he's sticking with some of the in-house people, maybe that would be the better way to go. I have no idea, but wanting your people around you, I think is very, very important. I thought that would maybe have more of a role than maybe Core sticking around.
Yeah, and what you're saying with that's what the tea leaves are reading to me right now. Just with if you're not cleaning house, just hire the guy that's already there, the guy that's familiar with it, give him a promotion. He's well respected. That would be my pick right now, Eddie Romero. But of the people that have been mentioned, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, but of the people that you've heard mentioned, is there anybody that really stands out besides Romero that you'd be interested in them hiring?
Yeah, well, the people that have been mentioned, but then all of a sudden, I mean, right away when this whole thing went down, I said, the first phone call, needs to be Mike Hazen. You know what I mean? And it just obviously they extended him, and that wasn't the case. And I think Kim Ng, I think, is very interesting as well. And it's just like bringing it to the big market. And I know a lot of people are going to make it about her being a woman and everything else. And it's like, no, I don't care. Even if it's like a man coming from any city, it's like Chaim Bloom. Can he handle this market no matter who it is? But I think that she has got enormous, respect around the game. She's been around the game a long time. I think she did good things down there in Miami. I think the owner, who seems to be a little more analytical, leaves the Miami Marlins because of disagreement with the owner. I side with Derek Jeter and everyone else against the owner, right? So if Kim Ng is leaving because of the owner, I side with Kim Ng, so it's just so I think that's interesting to look into. The one I don't know about was it Levine up in Minnesota?
That Levine.
I don't know much about him. And this is what we talked about it before. Like, it's not like a player in a scouting report, a pitcher that you like, you don't like. I don't know who's running the show in Minnesota, right? Like, people don't really know that well. Hold on. Can you bring my backpack down here? I got my charger. Thank you. It's in the closet. Here's what I don't like about Minnesota, period. Because I went to the game and I talked to the people that cover that team. They're so analytical driven. I think it's overboard. Like, if you look, like, nobody pinch hits more than they do. Third inning, whatever, 3-hole hitter comes out because he's a lefty, he comes to righty. Like, they platoon, like, it's out of control. And people, like, they do it too much. And I know they got to the playoffs with it. The division sucked. But still, I don't want that. Like, I'm not saying there's no place for analytics, because I think you're dumb if you don't use analytics. If you don't use analytics, turn to the Patriots and the game passes you by. You know what I mean? So Red Sox use analytics, but Alex Cora doesn't manage a game based on analytics. Like, I never watched a game going, this is an analytical move. I never watched a game other than like certain pitchers that the analytics love, like a Joe Vera or a Brazier. But I've never watched a Red Sox game and said, what is he doing? Oh, this is an analytics move. You know what I mean? Like, I never felt that way. With the Twins, you get it all the time. You get it all the time. And if that's the case, I don't want that coming here. But again, I don't know how much of a role he had in that. So there's a lot of names, Breslow's name popping up. And I don't know how serious that is, right? But I think that's kind of interesting. But Kim Ng, I think, is interesting.
Wanted to ask you your opinion on what was the number. What do you, in your opinion, what is the number one biggest downfall that Bloom had that led to his departure?
Trade deadline. Trade deadline. These guys aren't dumb. You heard Kenley Jansen talking about it. You try to talk about it instead of like being real and being honest, it turns into, oh, they're just babies. Well, it's the reality. It's the reality. Look who's playing right now. The Houston Astros went out and got Justin Verlander and Kendall Graveman. The Texas Rangers had a bullpen problem, and they went out and got Aroldis Chapman. And then they signed, Scherzer. And then they went out and got Jordan Montgomery. Like, the Orioles got Jack Flaherty. Why do you think they're golfing right now? You know what I mean? Like, it's the deadline. Like, and the Red Sox were in it at the deadline. I was looking, the Red Sox were not 8 games over 500 in August. And 3 years in a row. And even with Schwarber. Sorry, like you needed a first baseman. You got a guy that when he fielded a ground ball clean, he tipped his cap to the crowd. Like it was, he was a great bat. Don't get me wrong, and I love the guy, and he can swing the shit out of it. But 3 years in a row, you let a clubhouse down, and you couldn't pull the trigger. And then you started hearing about the stories about certain trades that could have went through, it didn't go through, and everything else. And people kept saying about how it's like leaks from ownership. People knew that shit like right when it happened, weeks after. They just held on to it because it's his job, and no one's going to sit there in the media and write some article shredding the current GM of the team. But the minute he let go, they couldn't wait to write that stuff because people knew about Chris Sale. They knew about Verdugo. They knew about JD Martinez the year before and all these other guys, and just he couldn't pull the trigger. In the last minute, like that's why teams, you started hearing like teams didn't want to deal with him, like because the last minute is unrealistic. It was I want your best prospect for James Paxton who might break down. The two best pitching prospects for Paxton who might break down, like stuff like that. And teams like this is ridiculous. Why are we even having a conversation? I'm not going to do that. So the trade deadline, like couldn't pull the trigger, and just couldn't get it done. I think the trades and the deadline killed them.
And I'm not sure how this is going to be a completely opposite direction here, but I know we were talking a little bit about the coaching openings, but I don't know. I'm not sure if you ever get in the weeds on Red Sox Twitter. I'm sure you do. I'm sure your mentions are always loaded, but I've been seeing it a ton lately. And do you think it's ever a possibility that a guy like Dustin Pedroia joins the coaching staff?
I'd like for him to, but I don't think there is right now because I think whenever we talk about these guys like joining staffs or being managers, GMs, and coaches, you got to first look at the dude himself and his life and where he's at. And I've run into so many guys that are like, nah, I'm not interested. My kid's a sophomore in high school. Maybe in 3 years I might get back into pro ball on the field, things like that. I think Petey, and I don't talk to him. I'm not that friendly with him, but from the sound of it, like his kids are young. We know that. And he's enjoying. So I'm not sure he's ready to leave 8 months a year, each and every day, being at the field at noon, coming home at 12, at night. You know what I mean? Like that's just a huge commitment. Maybe he is. I have no idea, but it just seems to me like that he's probably more comfortable where he is right now. And we'll see. I'd love for him to though, because I know he could help out.
Yeah, you were saying how much happier you've been, doing the calling the games and all that. But is coaching something you'd ever be interested in at some point?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No. No, and for that reason, thank you, but my iPad was gonna die on me. My son's hooking me up. No, when I stopped playing, it was like an option for me at the time, and I don't know. My last year playing, I was in AAA, and I was really good friends with the manager, and it was just that lifestyle. I'm like, I can't do it. I was getting married in the off season. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Traveling every day. You guys are reports, writing up stuff, and it was just like the lifestyle wasn't enough. Like I just didn't want anything to do with that, at the time. So, and I still don't. So the media thing's a little bit better. I liked it more.
What have you thought of Will Middlebrooks in the behind the booth?
Will doing games?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Will's been great. I know there's a lot of pregame, but I like listening to him. I like listening to everybody that does the games. When I'm back there, I did a lot of games with Millar, and that's always fun because we just kind of shoot the shit more than anything. It's more like fun hanging out with him pregame during BP and then up in the, grabbing a little dinner or something before the show. But it's good. But no, I thought Will does a great job. I know he's more into analytics. You know what I mean? Maybe that, I like the analytics stuff of it, but I don't, I'll use it if there's a story to tell because of it. Like if there's use a stat to why this guy's struggling or why he's doing well or whatever it may be. But I know he dives into it. He loves that a lot. I know Yuke's into it a little bit as well. So I think it's a good mix.
So when you called a game with Millar, were you on your toes at all times because you didn't know what was about to come?
Oh, yeah. I play with Millar, so I was always on my toes, with him. So it's you kind of always know where it's going too, right? Because he almost has like a shit-eating grin too before he goes and says something. You're like, here we go. Something's coming out now.
Yeah. Another one of your teammates, and I mean it's been 2 weeks now, but with Tim Wakefield, who you worked with as a player, as a commentator. How's everybody been holding up with his passing, and how's his family doing?
Yeah, they're they're not doing well. A lot of I know a lot of it came out. Obviously there's a lot going on in his family even before that diagnosis. With his wife. So I think a lot of it has been more sympathy for him when you see him, things like that. And then this was just, I don't know, was it 3 weeks since diagnosis? It was just shocking. I know when I heard the news of the diagnosis and the surgery, it was kind of supposed to be kept under wraps, as we all know, until it wasn't. And I think it was that Friday when Shield kind of said what he said. And then Saturday when I talked to Tech out in Texas, Baltimore, that final weekend, he was doing great. He's doing real well after surgery and everything. And then it was Sunday, and I found out around whatever it was, 1:30 before that 3:00 game. So that was hard because you're still kind of processing it. And to be honest with you, it still took a while to realize that it actually happened, and I feel like a lot of people are still can't believe it even happened, and then it's the whole family dynamic, with his daughter and his son and his wife. That's where the whole thing gets really emotional and sad. So yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people. I mean, obviously some people, I played with him for 6 years. Like he was a pitcher, like I was friends with him. We became friends with him obviously too, doing TV, but I wasn't like, don't pretend to be like I'm like one of his tight friends. I know Tech was there with him through and through, and there's a lot of really good buddies that we played with in the past. So, but he was just such a good dude. I mean, Wakey was just the best, and it's really sad.
I want to speak of it's of one of your former teammates. I got the chance to meet a guy this year who was managing in the Nationals organization this past year in Worcester, Brian Daubach. And I know you played on the same team of him for, I think, 4 seasons.
Yep.
That guy was one of the coolest dudes I met on an opposing team this year. Do you have any good stories of you with you and Daubach together?
He put me in a hospital in Tampa Bay. I can tell you that much. And that Pedro Martinez brawl with Williams, and he charged him out. And I was at third base and kind of went in there and tried to tackle Gerald. But when I fell to the ground, because Tech tackled both of us from behind, and nobody wins that battle when Tech tackles you and Gerald Williams. On my way down, that's when Dauber came into the pile and dropped a knee in the back of my. So Dauber was the best. Like we always got along well, brown baggers, so we still actually, when we talk, whatever, every time, if I call him, he always answers, Bagger, what's going on? He's the best, man. I've talked to him a lot here recently, and we do fantasy camp, like in January or so, something down in Fort Myers. So we get together. I'm looking forward to that. Trot, Dauber, Billy Miller. So it's a good group of guys, but he is fantastic. He can drink now. The boy can get after it, which I can respect. So he's a good man. He could hit. That boy could hit. He probably didn't get enough respect, man. He just freaking launched. Like, he was a really good hitter. He hit third and fourth at times for the Boston freaking Red Sox. You know what I mean? Like 20-something bombs, and just kind of got brushed aside, at arbitration, those sort of things. He got screwed. He's a good man.
This is like just hearing some of these names. This was around when I really started falling in love with baseball and became a Red Sox fan. And there's obviously the one guy that everybody of a certain age group at a certain time remembers as being their hero, Nomar Garciaparra. And I've heard you wax poetically about him before, but what's something that people might not know about Nomar that maybe they should know, like that you think they should know?
He's really close with his family, man. Like, he's just like his parents and his brothers and sisters. Like, he's a family guy. And I think that's kind of why we really clicked when we met in A-ball. When you get a Mexican family together with an Italian family, like, it's very similar. You know what I mean? It's just very similar. They drink tequila, we drink wine. You know what I mean? Like, they might have carne asada, we might be looking for some pasta, right? But it's still a party. But a very superstitious guy. We all know about the whole like wrist things and everything else, but he would always everything was 5s. You would step up the stairs, 5 steps up, or it was like a step. It wouldn't do one at a time. He both, step up with one, put his next foot on the next step. So it was just one at a time. Like he was just out of control with some of those superstitions of his, but just a really good dude. You know what I mean? Who really cared about his family, and obviously a great player.
You know what was funny, Ed, is you kind of were just saying, it's everybody's favorite player was Nomar, but I'm not even kidding when I say this, that Brian Daubach was my favorite baseball player growing up, because he was right there in that sweet spot where I was about 5-6 years old when he was playing. And he's a St. Louis guy, and I grew up in St. Louis. So I had a Daubach signed. It was like a NESN, like little, I don't know, little thing. It said, "To Drew, best of luck." He sent he knew my dad, and he like signed it for me. And I thought Brian Daubach was the coolest dude on planet Earth. And I'm like, this guy, like, you call him a brown bag. It's kind of funny, but I thought he was David Ortiz for all I cared. Like, that guy was, I don't know. It was so cool meeting him this year, because I'm just like, did you know that your picture was on my wall like my entire childhood? He's like, why? I don't know. So he thought I was a little crazy, but
he hit bombs, dude. He's a stud.
Yeah, but Lou, we've taken up about 45 minutes of your time. Ed, do you have any final ones to wrap things up?
Honestly, I was just waiting on that Nomar one, so yeah, I feel good.
No,
fair.
I think it's good, man.
Awesome. Good. Well, Lou, we appreciate. I could have probably sat here and asked you questions for about 2 hours. So, but as we appreciate the time so much, and good luck with the rest of the off season.
You got it, Andrew, Ed. Anytime, boys. Let's do it again before the winter's up, when we get some action here. Hopefully, another month.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're taking you up on that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right. Well, thank you, Lou.